Sergio Leone only directed 7 films, and in my opinion, if he would have made a few more, he probably would be considered the greatest director of all time. But for me personally, he is already one of my favorites. It's never a dull time watching one of his movies. So today I decided I should rank all of his movies. Number 7. The Colossus of Rhodes. This is Leone's first movie. Well, technically he co-directed a movie before this, but he took over during production of that, so it wasn't entirely his creative vision, but Colossus of Rhodes was. But even if you're not a fan of Leone or familiar with most of his work, you can tell that this is a bit different than his other movies. It's not a western or a gangster film, it's a sword and sandal movie about the famous Colossus of Rhodes. So you might be wondering, how did a director who is so famous for westerns get his start in a different genre? Well, spaghetti westerns actually kind of evolved from swords and sandals films. Both are movies based on myths of heroes in history, and they both have characteristics that American critics love to poke fun at, like bad dubbing. So now that we've covered the backstory of it, let's talk about this movie actually. Well, to be honest with you, I wouldn't recommend it. I would only recommend it to someone if you are wanting to complete Leone's filmography, but other than that, it's a very weak debut. It's hard to even see Leone's flair in this. There are a few things I do like about this movie though. For one, the actual Colossus of Rhodes looks great and super realistic, as well as the battle scenes, they all look amazing and cool. And to be honest with you, the sword and sandal genre is just not for me. I don't really enjoy most of the movies I've seen in it. But I do understand that there are plenty of people who love the genre in the same way I love spaghetti westerns, and they do say that The Colossus of Rhodes is one of the better films in that genre. So if you want to complete the filmography, check it out. If not, I would maybe stay away from it. Number 6. A Fistful of Dynamite. First off, this movie has many different names it's known by. You will see it called A Fistful of Dynamite, or Duck You Sucker, and also Once Upon a Time in the Revolution. So I've always known it as Duck You Sucker. That's when I first watched it, that's what the title was. But I decided to call it A Fistful of Dynamite in this entry because that's what it seems to be most commonly named online. So I just wanted to make it easier for most people to understand. So anyway, let's get into it. This movie happens to be Leone's very last western. So obviously that's a big deal for a man so famous for making westerns. And to be honest, it kind of disappointed me. It just doesn't have the same feeling as his other 4 westerns. It's not a bad film by any means. I think that Colossus of Rhodes is his only bad film. This is not a bad film, but it just doesn't live up to the incredible standard that he had set. In A Fistful of Dynamite, we follow Juan and John and their adventures during the Mexican Revolution. Juan and John are played by Rod Steiger and James Coburn respectively, 2 legendary actors, and it just feels like they didn't work well with Leone's style. Steiger in particular, he and Leone crashed on set, and Steiger even walked off set once, and you can sort of feel that in the movie. They both wanted different things for the character. But there are many things to like about this film. Number 1, it feels very epic in scale, and also Ennio Morricone delivers another amazing score. It's not a bad film like I said, it's just not as good as his other westerns for me. Number 5. A Fistful of Dollars. I just want to say that from here on out, I think all these movies are legendary, some of the best of all time. But one of them had to be 5th because that's how rankings work. And I chose A Fistful of Dollars. Not because it's bad, like I said, just because it's my least favorite. So, A Fistful of Dollars is the movie that put Leone on the map. Not to mention Eastwood and Morricone also, who gained lots of star power because of this. To me, A Fistful of Dollars is the quintessential spaghetti western movie. Obviously, I don't think it's the best, otherwise I would have it higher, but I think this movie shows what spaghetti westerns do best, and do better than American westerns. In A Fistful of Dollars, we are introduced to Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name, who I think is one of the best characters in cinema history, period, any genre, any whatever. And this is a perfect first story to tell with him. I do think, however, that a great hero needs a great villain in order to have the best out of the both of them. And the villain in this movie, a man named Ramon, is the weakest in the Dollars trilogy in my opinion. But that's pretty much the only thing I think could be changed in this movie. It's a great movie and a movie that forever changed its genre. Number 4. For a few dollars more. The second movie in the Dollars trilogy improves upon the first. Let's start with the villain, which I criticized in the last movie. This time around, the villain is a man called Indio. Even though Indio and Ramon from the last movie are played by the same actor, Gian Maria Volonté, this time around, the villain is amazing. Also, I think it adds to him that in this movie his gang is way more memorable than in the previous movie. Even Klaus Kinski appears as one of his goons. For a few dollars more also adds a new hero to the mix, Lee Van Cleef as Colonel Douglas Mortimer. Van Cleef and Eastwood work great off each other, they have a great chemistry, but even just the character of Mortimer himself is a surprisingly sympathetic character who's just on a quest for revenge for his sister. Contrast this with the main character, the man with no name, who is just trying to get some more money. Another way how I think this movie improves on the last is in the scale. It just feels more epic than a fistful. This is something that Leone did very well in every one of his movies. Every new movie somehow tops the last one in terms of scale and epicness. Number 3. Once Upon a Time in the West. Now, I have to say that these last 3 movies were very hard to rank. They are all top 25 movies of all time in my eyes. That's how good Leone is. When I first watched Once Upon a Time in the West, I thought it was great, but nothing special. I've since watched it many times, and I think that it is amazing. First off, let's talk about the characters. The main 4 characters are Jill, Frank, Harmonica, and Cheyenne. Jill is the best female character in Leone's entire filmography, which isn't saying a lot because there aren't much in there, but still, she is a very sympathetic character who is thrown into a terrible situation and somehow still keeps a strong face, and in the end comes out on top. Harmonica is probably the most iconic character from this movie, with his trademark harmonica and his insane skills with a gun, and the way his backstory slowly unravels is perfect and perfectly tones the movie. Next up is Cheyenne, who in my opinion is the weakest of the main 4. I think he serves the plot well, but other than that, he's just okay. And finally, Frank, the villain, my favorite character in the entire movie. The decision to cast Henry Fonda, the man known for being the quintessential Hollywood good guy, as an evil villain who doesn't mind killing whole families, was a legendary casting decision by Leone. Henry Fonda blew this out of the park, there's no other way to put it. And overall, you can tell that everyone involved in this movie knows that they are part of something legendary, and they all put their best foot forward. Number 2. Once Upon a Time in America. Leone's final movie. Originally, Leone was approached to direct The Godfather. He passed on it and eventually grew to regret that. So you might think that with that backstory, that Once Upon a Time in America might stand in the shadow of The Godfather, but it doesn't. Once Upon a Time in America is a 4-hour gangster epic that, in my opinion, is better than The Godfather. Don't get mad, that's just my opinion. The main character, Noodles, played by Robert De Niro, is probably the most despicable of all Leone's anti-heroes, but somehow you still care for him, and by the end of the movie you even feel for him and his friends. Leone was able to take a story of evil gangsters and turn it into a story of friendship and the human condition. The scale of this movie is also incomparable. That is in large part due to Ennio Morricone's score. This is hard to say, but I think it may be his best score. Every scene is amplified by his music, and also the side supporting characters are all great, particularly Max, played by James Wood. The friendship between him and Noodles is the core of the movie. This is Leone's most emotional movie, and the 4 hours just fly by. Number 1. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of the most iconic movies of all time, and for good reason. Everything about this movie is perfect. Clint Eastwood is at his peak here, and this time around Lee Van Cleef is playing the villain, a villain known as Angel Eyes. Although you don't see much of Angel Eyes, when you do, he steals every scene. And joining the cast this time around is Eli Wallach as Tuco, a morally black man who only cares about one thing: money. On the surface, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly has a simple plot: 3 men trying to get the same $200,000. But this simple plot is pushed to its limit, and the 3 characters work off each other and the plot perfectly, especially in the final duel, which contains minutes of just the 3 actors acting with only their eyes, and paired with Ennio Morricone's most iconic score, it makes for one of the greatest scenes in cinema history. By only his 4th movie, Sergio Leone had already left his mark on cinema history. And for good reason. This movie will be remembered for generations and generations. This movie will be studied for generations and generations. This is one of the greatest movies of all time. Hey everybody, just quick outro here. I wanted to say thank you for watching. My channel has been gaining a lot of views recently, especially on my Michael Mann ranked videos, which is the reason why I want to do another ranked, because it was just fun to make and it's clearly people like it. So I decided to make Sergio Leone one of my favorite directors. So yeah, if you got any comments, leave them in the comments. If you want to see another ranked video, sure, leave a comment about who you would like to see. And thank you for watching.